All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. This is our first ever webinar. This is going to be a series of webinars moving forward. Today we're going to be focusing on the LCP introduction of the profile to clients, along with a small debrief session. We're going to begin by introducing ourselves. I'm Megan Court-Langford, the VP of Operations. This is John Tanner. He's going to be our client today. He's the CIO. And then this is Cindy Adams. Many of you probably already know her. She probably doesn't need an introduction, but she's one of the partners, and she's going to be coaching the coach, which is going to be me. As I said, we're going to be walking people through the profile, just orienting them to the entire profile, what it means. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. Oh, we have a little feedback here. Let me go ahead and mute. Series of webinars moving forward. That.
There we go.
There we go. Now we can be back on it. So we have the profile just from the binder, just from our regular Leadership Circle brochure in front of us. That's what we're going to be using to orient. We also have an actual profile that we're going to be using. You should be able to see that on your screen. That's the profile we're going to be walking through our client with today. We're going to take about 30 minutes today to walk through that initial introduction of the profile along with a mini debrief session. As you all know, generally a debrief session is 90 minutes, but we don't have that kind of time today.
So what we're going to do, to be more specific, is to just walk through that initial part of the debrief. Help you that haven't done a 360 for a while or have maybe just gone through certification and aren't quite sure how to begin this process. So Megan's going to orient to the profile and start the debrief, and then in the next series we'll go into a deeper dive around the debrief. So this is to get John just through that initial wave of what happens when a client gets a profile and they're a little bit stunned by it or shocked by it.
It's not going to be pretty.
But it's going to be very informative, so we're all going to enjoy it. All right, so let's begin by walking through the initial profile. So John, are you familiar with the LCP at all? Has this been laid out for you?
No.
Okay,
no.
So this is the first time you've seen what a profile is going to look like?
Yeah, first time.
Okay.
Took the questions and now I'm looking for the results.
Okay, great. Well, this is not directly your results based on those questions. This is just a general overview of the profile that I want to walk you through, so we can kind of orient you to what you see.
I'm going to get a report like this.
You are. You're going to get a report like this, exactly. Okay. So it's broken out into two main areas. So you'll see that it says creative.
Right.
And you'll see that it's, and then it says reactive below.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a line that divides it right in between. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit more in depth. But I also want to show you that there's task and there's relationships as well.
So everything from here up is
creative.
Everything from here down is reactive. Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
And then this side is task and this side is
the
people.
side, a line down the middle here, and this side is all task, and this is relationship. So what is this area quadrant would be here then? Because it's partly reactive, partly relationship.
Yes, so it's related to the reactive items and relationship based.
Okay, so it's reactive relationship items, and this would be then? This
would be task. This would be partially task and creative.
Okay.
Up here.
Up here, and this would be reactive.
Reactive and task down here.
Okay.
So it's 4 quadrants.
So do you want to be more relationship or more task, or what do you want to, what are we looking to become?
Well, there's not really a negative per se, because a lot of these reactive things, as we pull open your profile, we'll talk about this in a little bit more in depth, but reactive has served you up to a certain point in your career. We're trying to figure out how we can shift some of these things to bring out more of your creative.
So I'm not going to find anything negative in my report.
Well, there may be some negative, but I don't want us to focus.
I had a feeling that was there was going to be some negative somewhere.
So I would stop right here and coach Megan off to the side a little bit before she does this, but we'll do this now, and say that John is really running this for you. And as a coach, you don't want him necessarily to be running this for you. So you need to just say, John, let me explain some things to you first before we just jump into your questions, because I know.
And I think that's what you'll find with a strong leader.
Exactly,
too,
exactly.
They'll be
because you're trying to dive in, and she's trying to give you an overview, and so for her just to step in and say, hang on. I'll answer some of your questions. Let me get
Okay.
through this construct first so that
All right.
we can really lay the groundwork.
Okay, so tell me that.
Yes. So let's take a step back, John.
Okay.
Let's not focus directly on you and what your results are going to be
Okay,
yet.
okay.
Let's just focus on what this means so that
All
we
right.
can lay a strong foundation. So when
Okay.
we do open up your profile, you'll be able to get a little bit more information and it'll make more sense to you.
Okay.
Does that sound like
Yeah,
a good
that
plan
sounds
moving
fine.
forward?
Yep,
Great.
go right ahead.
Okay, wonderful. So Cindy, where would you, so you've laid out, you've showed them the different quadrants. So what would you take them from there?
Okay, so this is the area where you can now dive into understanding a little bit more about what they see on the brochure. And we're just using that sample one that's in the brochure. And I would now go back to, well, I wouldn't go back to the reactive creative yet. I'd go into this filled line space. So I'd say, John, you see orange and you see a black line there, right?
Yep.
And there's also an inner circle, and I kind of cover the outer circle, and an outer circle. So let's just look at the inner circle here, kind of pretend like this outer circle
Okay.
doesn't exist. And you see the components on the creative side, which are relating, self-awareness, authenticity, systems awareness, and achieving. And here are your summary scores on top, which are the orange and then the black. The black line is your self-score. The orange are the aggregate scores of everybody else that filled out your survey, aggregated to our database.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And the same is true now on the bottom half of the circle, which are the reactive structures: complying, protecting, and controlling. So what do you notice about the self-score and the aggregate scores in this profile?
The self-score in the creative is much higher than the aggregate, and the self-score is somewhat lower on the reactive.
Correct.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yep, absolutely. And what do you think that means for that leader?
That his people don't know what they're doing.
Yep. That's one interpretation. What would be the other interpretation?
That this person doesn't have a good grasp of reality.
Or that they're,
Their perception of what other people think is very different from what they think.
yeah,
They think they are, and other people see them very differently than they see themselves.
yeah.
Right?
So perceptions are off.
Right.
And the leader's awareness of their impact is off. They think they're driving one outcome when the perception is that they're driving maybe not that outcome. Would that be true for you?
It could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's one way to then start to dive deeper into this construct. Just start there, and then you can go out and say each one of these summary scores has components in them. And here's where, Megan, and I'm going to have you take it so you can try to do it. I'd explain what complying, protecting, and controlling, what those three character structures really are in reactive, so that we start to work the word reactive versus creative.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to be in this quadrant?
Okay. So let's start over here on controlling.
Okay.
So controlling, when you think of controlling, you think of somebody just trying to take over, get things done, just doesn't really stop, ask for questions, just kind of moves forward, keeps moving forward. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
That's a good one-word reaction or description. Protecting, however, that's more of somebody kind of moving away. They're protecting themselves. They're not really wanting to take many risks. They're just trying to protect themselves, to get things done, to save themselves in certain situations.
Right, okay.
Right? And then complying is just kind of doing what is going, just kind of following the wave and the current and just going along with the way that things are.
Okay.
Okay, so does that give you a good understanding? Do you feel like, as an overview, you understand the complying, protecting, and controlling?
I think I understand the basic concept that it's reactive, and then the below here is, or at the top is creative, the bottom is reactive, and that there can be a difference between what your perception is and what other people's, and that's displayed on the graph, and that there are different areas of types of reacting, being reactive, and different areas of being creative. In fact, it looks like there's more creative areas than there are reactive areas, right?
Yeah, there's more areas in the creative than there is in the reactive.
Okay.
That is correct.
Does it sound like I know what I'm
I think it's
at?
a pretty good overview.
Yeah,
Would you then take them to the creative and
I
lay out
think
some of
you
those?
can take them to the creative because these are the leadership competencies, and I'd also now just draw a very quick distinction for your client about why this line is even there. Why are we looking at reactive versus creative? So this is built on an integrated leadership model where it also incorporates adult development into the model.
Okay.
And what we noticed, and what Bob Anderson, the creator of the instrument, noticed, is that the creative leadership competencies are all post-conventional. Post-conventional means that it's in a new stage of development than is reactive. Reactive is more conventional. So 80% of all adults are socialized or conventional. We know how to obey the rules. We know how to succeed in life. We're productive citizens in the world. All of these reactive tendencies and our structure, and this work comes from Karen Horney, who did a lot of this work, and a lot of the psychological work of Eric Fromm, etc. So this is psychometrics now, very much integrated. This is all a fully functioning, productive, successful adult. So when you hear the word reactive, that can throw you off a little bit. I want you to hear it as, I've learned to react and respond to my world in a way that's made me safe, in a way that's made me productive, in a way that's kept me successful so far. The problem is, or the stretch for leaders is, that the leadership competencies are above the line, meaning they require something different than just the conventional way of doing it. They are post-conventional. So they require a stretch. That means I need to see things differently, maybe do things differently. So maybe my controlling now is the very thing that made me successful, maybe is going to limit me from being as successful as I need to be in all of these competencies up here.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So what do these thermometers on the side mean?
So these kind of show how so over here, you'll kind of see the summary dimensions, but we're not going to read through those directly. But that's what we refer to these as, are the summary dimensions. So you see you have a leadership effectiveness. This kind of highlights how effective you are in your current leadership style, right? And you'll see that in this graph, this person rates themselves higher in leadership effectiveness, as do the people within.
And that's the aggregate.
Yeah, that's all of the data compiled so that you can see the leadership effectiveness of this person.
Okay, so this is one correction I need to make. So the leadership effectiveness score is based on 5 questions in the leadership survey, and we will get to those when we get in your report.
Just 5 questions?
Just 5 questions, but they're strongly correlated to the top competencies, and we can go through that.
Okay. So just 5 questions can tell me whether I'm effective or not.
This score is based on 5 questions asked several times in the survey that talk about, I am an effective leader, I am a model for the organization, I help this organization to thrive. Those are 3 of the 5.
Okay.
And it's those questions that particular bar is rating. This is an aggregate of all.
Okay.
This is how reactive or creative you are. The more that goes up, the more creative. You tend to play day to day. Right now you can see that this leader is more reactive than they are creative, but they still have some good stuff going on. But they think they're more creative than they are, right? And this is a task relationship balance.
Okay.
So what would this say to you?
That the person who's taking this thinks that their balance between giving out tasks and maintaining good relationships are fairly good.
Do they have a good balance between both?
And this would say these people think that he's given tasks and has no concern about their relationships or very little.
Okay, that's a good guess. It's not weighted that way in terms of relationship or task. This just tells you that you tend to be more task-oriented or relationship-oriented. And you can see on this one, this is why you guessed that they're far more task-oriented than they are relationship-oriented, where this person is seeing far more balance between the two.
Okay.
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 All right, I think that's
Yeah.
what I do in an orientation pretty much.
Very good. All right.
The basic idea is just to give me at least some ground to work with when I see my own, right?
Yes. So you know what you're seeing a little bit, and you've also diffused for them any reaction right up front because they're looking at something that's not theirs. They're just trying to understand what the instrument is. Then when they get theirs, they have some context and a lens through which to look at their own data.
Okay.
All right, we're going to pull up what is John's graph. And as we said, everyone should have this on their screen so everyone can view it along with us. So here, John, is your actual graph. Do you want to take a few moments to look through it? Based on our conversations before about what the graph means, what the different quadrants are, just take a few moments to look at this and we'll talk about it in a moment. And
yeah, it looks like I asked the wrong people to evaluate. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, that could be one possibility. What would be another possibility?
Well, the other possibility could be that the graph can have some helpful information in it. It could also be that it wasn't built for someone like me.
Okay.
So Megan, as a coach here, when you start to get some of those reactions, do you have a feel of where to go?
Yes.
Okay, dive in, see how you do.
So based on your initial response to your graph, do you sense there may be some protecting? Do you maybe feel like you're starting to get a little distant?
Okay, so this is a typical first time or second time person thing, and this is why we're doing this, is to help our whole community get better at debriefing profiles. The first is to see where we want to go versus where, help them to now reorient themselves to their own. So you know how we did that overview in the example, now kind of just do a little bit of an overview for them with theirs. So tell me about what you see between your line and others. What are you seeing here? Just start there.
Rather than going directly into
because
coaching.
they may be worried about other things than you are right now.
Yeah.
So just help them to see what it is they're seeing in their own.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you have rated yourself versus how those who you've asked to fill out your profile have rated you.
Well, one of the first things I looked at would be integrity, and I rate myself high on integrity, and these two areas here, I can't see the one. Courageous authenticity. These are all, there's a big difference between what other people rate me and what I rate myself.
And then you can see that down here in that authenticity as well. What about some of these on the reactive side?
I can see that I rate myself low in reactive and other people rate me high.
But then let's also show you some of these tasks as well. Okay. So this one here in decisiveness, it's right on.
Yeah.
The way that you see yourself and the way that others see you as well seems pretty consistent, right? When you initially look at this, what do you see? Or because you're moving into a new leadership role, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, first answer the first question, I see a mess. My perceptions and other people's don't match. And to me, it's probably a little overwhelming because there is, if you had just one thing to fix, that would be one thing. But this just pretty much shows everything needs fixed. That's how I would react.
That's how you're reacting to it.
Perfect. Yeah. So, this is where you show some empathy and say, wow, I really understand how you could start to be feeling a little overwhelmed by this, and acknowledge that. And that's my job
they go through this.
Absolutely. That's my job as a coach now, to help you navigate through this so we can navigate through it successfully. And you're going to go through a little bit of shock and a little bit of overwhelm, but just hang with it, because we'll start to make sense of it.
So the other thing that I would ask as someone who was going through this would be, how do I even know this is right? I would question it.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was mine, before I started any drastic overhauls of my approach to life and people and tasks and relationships, I want to know if this was even correct, because I don't want to make drastic changes for something that isn't accurate. So,
have you experienced that in your debriefing of
I
others?
have
that
experienced,
protecting?
yeah. So I would say it's very natural, especially when you are just first receiving information, to wonder if it's accurate. What we can tell you is that we have a database of 60,000 leaders, and that means at least 600,000 people taking the survey and evaluating it, and it's highly statistically correlated. And so the instrument itself is valid. What you may need to sort through now is where you fit in terms of how your peers rated you, how your directs rated you, how your boss rated you, how your boss's boss rated you, and make sense of it for yourself in this new job and in this new culture. What I see as a coach, and maybe I talk about this a little bit, is that you tend to have been very successful in your career by taking charge, getting things done, and being extremely smart. And because you've been extremely smart,
is what you're doing.
well, not really. This is true, because
But you're looking at the positive.
But I'm looking at, this is what got you here, and this is very successful. This is why we made the distinction earlier around, this is a conventional way of thinking. To either move against power to get things done, which is controlling. The gift in that is that I take charge and I get things done, and I drive results through. What I may lose focus on is that I may drive results through at the expense of people and leave some bodies in my wake.
The task versus the relationship.
Right. But boy, do I ever know how to drive a task through.
So the idea is not to make them feel like they're not, this looks, when you get this much information all at once, it's a little overwhelming. I've seen that with people too.
So John, I invite you to go into the role play and actually be that person.
All right.
So,
okay, I'll do that.
So work with Megan on that piece, right?
So the part that, as you can see, I'm going to be very task oriented here, because that's the way I see that. So my first impression is, okay, so let's just go with the assumption that this is fairly accurate, all right? I won't say it's 100% accurate. I don't think there is such a thing.
All right. Yeah.
But I would say maybe it's got the gist.
Okay.
Right? So I can't work on, however many of these there are. That's not realistic. So where do you even start? What do I even do? I mean, look at this, critical. I don't see myself as critical.
Yeah.
But apparently everybody else does. I mean, is it the way I'm saying it? Is it, what is it?
Would this be a good opportunity to start bringing a comment potentially into the mix and saying, and trying to put context or color behind what these results mean?
You absolutely could.
I mean, if I worked on the
you
two worst
absolutely
ones.
could. But you also notice what John is doing is he's doing what he does very best in this profile, which is just tell me what to do, the controlling, protecting. Let me just, give me the thing to work on, and then we'll, get on with it. And
Very task.
What we want to do is say, I know you really want to get down to what to do and what's going to make the most difference. Right now, we need to just sit with this pattern here, and I just want to ask you some questions about how it is you have been successful in the world up to now. How is it that you have been successful in your career? What approaches do you use?
Well, having worked in the military, I give orders. I need to know what needs to be done, and I give orders to have people do what I've asked them to do. And if they don't do it, there's punishment associated with it. And people don't question orders. You can't question orders. People can get killed when you question orders. So, and having control of the people that you're in charge of is critical. Because if people get out on the battlefield and then decide to question the orders and then turn back, it can be catastrophic. So I give orders, and people don't like the orders, that's too bad.
Perfect.
Those are the orders. Perfect. I get orders, I take orders.
Perfect. So now I want you to think about, go back even to college. How is it you were successful in college?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about what this person would say for that. But in college, I knew what was required. I knew you needed to be to class. I knew that there was certain score I needed to get. And I achieved those, by doing the tasks necessary to get there. Mm. I didn't get my grades by getting relationships. Mm-hmm. You got your grades by producing the appropriate results and getting an education. Mm-hmm.
So you can walk them all the way back, and the next question I would say is, well, that's so interesting because that's one way to be successful. I'm certain that that's a great way to be successful in the military, like you described. And what we're here now to look at is what you can add to that to be successful. Because that's only one way in a bunch of different ways to be successful. And now you have a new job that may require different nuances than you've had to experience before. So I want to even just, if you would, because these come back clear from childhood. What did you learn as a kid in terms of surviving your childhood? Because we all have that as a badge of honor. How were you noticed? How were you seen? How were you praised by your parents? What really stood out to them that made you feel like I'm worthy, I'm safe, I'm good in the world?
My dad was in the military too, and we moved around. And he expected us to, do our chores, not get out of line, help our mom when he was gone, and just follow the orders again, right?
So you decided to be like Dad.
In a lot of ways, I guess I am. So, the ones that bother me here a little bit is everyone seems to see me. In fact, the most, if I might use the term, most negative one is arrogant. Those people see me as arrogant. And I don't understand how people could possibly see me as, just because you give orders doesn't mean you're arrogant. Somebody has to give the orders.
So when he keeps going back to the profile, you're trying to take him in a different direction. He still keeps going back to here.
Yeah, so he wants to dive in.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, and that's very normal. And I would say it now is probably a time we can really start to dive in a couple areas to ease some of that anxiousness for you. But the critical part is to connect him to, and what I would say to him is that this isn't a pattern that just started in the military. This is a pattern that you carried from looking at your father, who was also in the military, wanting to be like him in some ways. We could even spend some time on, did you see your dad as somewhat arrogant? But we don't have to right now. But to trace that back, that this isn't just something that you do X and then Y and Z and it's okay. This is a pattern that started clear back from childhood in terms of how to be in the world and be in the world successful. With a model like your father, that's big stuff. That doesn't just go away by doing a little of this and a little of that, right? It's deeper than that. And that's what you want your client to recognize, that this is a pattern that's developed over an entire lifetime and a way of thinking and being that helps me feel like I'm okay and I'm successful. So as we tinker in these things, we need to know that that construct is really a part of it.
A big part of it.
Yeah.
The thing that makes me, even just acting here, make me feel a little better is when you say that, those things that's got you here have been good and work for you. Now it's just a matter of taking it to the next step and adding things to it, that help round you out, make you more successful in the next position.
Right.
So because your first impression from this is I'm a mess. How am I even possibly successful? Which isn't a clear representation.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that improving these, now you know where to improve, can really help you be more successful, even with the good skills that you have. You don't want to get rid of the good skills you have.
Well,
No.
that's why we don't frame this
Right.
as bad
And
good.
that's why, and it's hard work not to frame it as bad good.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how that happens all day long.
Because
So you
there's
need
so
to
much
keep
information.
reframing it in
There's
there.
so much information.
This
And
is
help
led
them to
to
see
good.
that this is led to good, and this is, these are strengths built on a reactive structure. So what we want to do is take those strengths and help grow them to where they don't have the bite or the edge to them that some of the reactive structures do.
One of the other things that affects me just doing this is the fact that when you score high here, they're large.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? They take up a lot of ink on the page,
Yeah.
so the impact of that
It's big.
is big.
And
And-
what I would
and
tell a
so-
leader also, John, you, that is reacting to some of that big, is leaders who play big have a big impact. So what you are not doing is playing small.
See, that's
You
good. So
are
that's the
playing out
positive
there.
thing.
Yeah.
And that's true. And when you play big, you get feedback. And so now we're looking at that feedback that's been in the system all along in a way that you can absorb it and see it and understand it maybe differently than you ever have before. And that's a good segue
Yeah.
now to then go into some of those specific areas.
Let's look at time. We're at about 1:30. We do have some comments. Do we want to just
Yeah.
open up some comments and
Yeah.
see where we are? Okay. Let's see. How do I... Good thing we have the CIO here, right? Okay. Let's see. I wonder if there's a way to make this even larger.
I can read that one. It says, can you, this is Janet, can define post-conventional and conventional stages of development a little more?
Okay,
I'm
so
going to turn it to the expert
yeah,
on these
so
questions.
Janet, this is part of your C1 certification, and I don't know if everybody on this call has been through certification.
Yeah, they're all
have
certified.
they? So go back into your materials and look at adult development. So we're kind of clumping these categories into two, which is conventional, post-conventional. But in Bob's, in all adult development models, they have starting with egocentric, and then there's another area, and then another area, integral, and it goes all the way up. So conventional is socialized. And that's another way of talking about it, is that, in fact, it's every parent's dream to just have their kids be socialized.
Yeah.
They obey the rules, they are considerate of others, they know how to complete work, you know that when you send them off to college that they're hopefully going to take that to another level.
You're describing teenagers, aren't you?
Yes, and teenagers and young adults. I mean, and that's where it used to be that we thought, and childhood development theorists, adult development came much later than childhood development, that we tapped out at 25, that we never really developed in terms of those kind of leaps past 25. Now we know that we do, and that's what post-conventional is. Post-conventional is seeing the world differently. So reactive is, I am worried about how others view me, and I take my lead from others.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
In fact, they just threw it up on the screen.
Very
good.
Yeah.
So, like when you said you wanted to be like Dad,
Yeah.
that's a conventional thing where I've taken on his values of my own, and I may not have examined them yet, or since then, and said, are they really my values? And the post-conventional is to be the author of my own life, and to re-look at some of that, kind of pick up that rock and look at it, and say, that's interesting, I decided that much back then. I get to redecide now and redefine myself. Post-conventional is self-authoring, where reactive is other authoring. Does that help, Janet, I hope? So that's just a little more of a
And there's
definition.
more of it in the manual.
And there's a lot more of it in the manual. And a lot more you can do around adult development. It's a deep topic.
Oh, who was the lady that did the development on that, or the work on that?
Susan Cook-Gruder is great, and Barbara Brown does a lot of adult development.
And they have some books.
And they do, yep.
Great. Let's see if there are any other questions currently. Oh, thank you. We got to thank you. You're welcome. Well, if there are any other questions, feel free to send them over our way. Yeah, we had some.
Okay.
And then from this point forward, so let's say there was a full 90 minutes, which we obviously don't have right now. So breaking into different parts of the profile is not going to be time conducive. So as we said earlier, this is going to be a series that we offer to people.
And I think next time we do pick it up on your specific questions and start to dive into these areas where your impact is so much bigger than you think it is, and walk John through that process of recognizing his impact, because right now he has several blind spots, and they literally are blind spots. You really can't see them. So our job as a coach and in this process is to help you see them just a little bit more clearly.
So this first 90-minute session, what would your goal be with me? You know, what would you want to achieve with me in the 90 minutes? If at the end of the 90 minutes you could walk away and say, that was successful, what would you have wanted to achieve as a consultant?
My impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just getting them to really understand the profile, what it means, the different areas of the profiles. And I mean, everyone's profile is going to be different, right?
Very
so
different.
you necessarily won't be able to know what you want to walk away with until you've had time to sit down and do the initial review. So this is more
education, because you're not at this point to try to help the person change anything.
Well, that could be an outcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I try to, just because the human need is to at least give me something tangible I can walk out of the room with.
Yeah.
So in the first 90 minutes, help them understand the profile, help them to be able to accept some of the perceptions as a possibility that they are true.
Okay.
Not that they are, solidly true, but to work with the possibility that they might be true.
Okay.
And to start to recognize and see how they could be true. So we'll start to work in the manual and start to work with different, some of your different examples and stories and comments, and start to see how they could be true. Just to get into alignment with my own self-awareness and other awareness. That's really the big goal of the first session, where you have this so far out of whack. You want to bring in congruence, self-awareness and other awareness just a little bit more, and have it start to be moving in that direction. And then give them one or two things to work at. So one of the things that Steve Athey, our partner, started doing, that we've all done a bit here, one of the tangibles you can have them do that's still, it's not like a thing to fix, it's the step out of here is to start to notice. So Megan might give John an assignment to notice all of the ways in which his critical show up. To start to take note when you are more critical than not. To start to notice it in a painfully, awareness sort of way.
Or even why it's perceived as critical.
And start to ask questions about that from people maybe that filled this out. Say, I got a score that was really highly critical and I don't see it. I want you, if you would, be willing to spend time with me. Help me see how I show up as more critical than I think I do.
Okay.
So that's something you can do.
And I guess the other question I would be asking was, in this, if you want to go back in the role play. You ready?
Yeah, we could.
Sure.
And we do have some questions that have come through in the meantime.
Okay.
So let's cover that, and then we can cover some of the other questions as well. Looks like we have two. So let's cover that, and then we can cover questions, or we can just go straight
let's
to
go ahead.
questions. You want to go straight to
Let's answer the questions.
Okay. We'll go straight to questions. Marty has asked, could you address the use of the percentage versus the specific scores?
So the specific scores are the raw scores that every evaluator gives in the rating. And the percentage scores are weighted against the database. So for instance, if I give John a score of 4 in he is sarcastic with others, which says almost always, then that's going to be weighted in the database. And so everybody that scored a 4 or higher is going to then come up with a percentage score. Well, all that's aggregated and weighted in a percentage score. So this is the database of everyone who's taken the survey, whereas the raw score is just the raw score. What we would say is significantly important at this point is the percentage score, because the percentage score is weighted against all other leaders who have taken this.
For the percentile, so where they fit.
Where you fit in the leadership aggregate.
So if we took our entire database, and let's take me for example, in this one here, where I'm rating in arrogance, right? Mm-hmm. So if I weighted arrogance in that, it would say that I'm in the 70th percentile. Yes. Which means that I'm fairly high up in the database.
Only 30% rated
higher
than you.
Of all of the people that was ever rated, only 30% rated higher.
Yep.
So if you were in the 95th percentile of anything, that means there's only 5% who ever rated in that area.
Another leader higher than
you. What out of 60,000 would be very, very few.
Yep.
Okay.
So that gives the leader a good perception of where they rank with all other leaders
that have been rated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And given leadership is a field that is portable,
competitive,
and very competitive, that's why we feel like the percentages matter more than the raw score.
Okay.
Great. That's a great question. Let's see. We have one from Brad. How do you respond to clients asking, so I should strive for more green on top and less on the bottom? I'm sure that's a question
that would be my impression too. I should be wanting to move these scores more green up here and a lot less here.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, and the leadership competencies are on top. So my response would be, that's a possibility. What I really wonder about for you is what you really want to see on top. What really matters to you? Out of all the leadership competencies are there, is there one or two that you really want to pick and drive as an area of awareness, and as an area that hopefully the next time you take this would really show up differently than it shows up now?
This one and this one.
Okay, so he's picked integrity and courageous authenticity. So that's a great place now to say, well, let's look at why that's not showing up. And that's where Megan was going to go before, which is a great place if you have 90 minutes to look at how protecting may be influencing that lack of integrity and courageous authenticity. So it isn't so much about making all of these go higher. It's sometimes one or two areas can have a ripple effect across the whole arc. And we can tell you that courageous authenticity and integrity is one of those. Mm-hmm. Where as you bring up that courageous authenticity and start to understand how that's showing up here but not here, and start to learn to work with that and change your mindset around that and experiment with your behaviors around that, that can have an effect across the whole circle.
In the C1 I attended, the moderator said that in fact they showed the statistics, the correlation between achieving and relating had the largest impact to the entire graph.
That does too, yeah.
So if you worked on achieving and relating and the details in those, and there's quite a few.
There's really, I would say authenticity, achieving, relating, those three kind of cornerstones of the top half are areas where you can have a lever that unlocks the whole thing for you.
But still, at this point, you mentioned you want to walk away with something, and for me, when you get into the role playing, you actually start to feel this.
Yeah. It's a very powerful tool, as many of you know.
The thing that I see with it is I want to know why somebody doesn't see me as.
Yeah, and this is where you can go into
questions are asked that would tell me specifically, and also in the critical, I would want to, I don't want to be seen as
This is where you go into the guidebook and into the questions.
See the delta between what other people think here and I think. These I don't worry too much about, or that. It could be better, but these are the ones where there's a big delta, and it's a large delta. What are the questions that people asked, that answered differently than I did, specifically, because I don't know.
Well, yeah, and that, I mean, like you said, that would be a good place to
Yeah,
pull
this
up.
would be a place where we'd start to pull up the comments
Mhm.
and a place where we'd go into the specific questions that make up that category. And please use your guidebook. So you can go straight to integrity in the guidebook, and it will give you beliefs and assumptions around people that scored high and low, as well as things you may or may not be doing.
Would you take the guidebook with you and lay it out?
Absolutely.
So that they could
I
actually
walk
read it?
through some of the guidebook together with my clients on specific areas.
So a good share of this is a lot of just educating them so that they can know how to even
dig into the guidebook.
understand
and
what's going
understand
on
it.
with it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All
We're
right,
probably out
let's
of time
see,
today.
we're almost, let's see, I think we could do one more question from,
Okay.
oh, she said we answered her question. Look how
Oh,
efficient we
look
are.
at that.
Look at that. That's great. All right, well, thank you everyone, and thank you Cindy especially.
Thank you,
And
everybody.
John for helping us out here.
Glad to.
Yeah, we are going to make this a series, so we are going to be focusing on this same profile going forward. If you do have any other questions, feel free to email. We'll send out some contact information, and then we can make sure that we get some of those questions answered, or actually answer some of those questions on our next series, which may be a good way to follow up.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.